All right, welcome to another episode of Between Sundays, podcast where we take the time in between Sundays to have some conversations that maybe you didn't have the time to get into at your church, or maybe straight up your church just doesn't talk about these things. But we are trusting that you will go out and have these conversations or continue these conversations with those people around you, friends, family, pastors, leaders, teachers, all that good stuff. My name is Theo. I've got with me my lovely co-host, Clint Eastwood.
Hi.
Those of you that are listening and not watching, Maxine is wearing a parka.
I'm wearing a parka. It's really cold in here, and one of our other staff members had this and was like, "Do you want to wear it?" And I was like, "Actually, yes." So
okay, I've heard of parkas. I've never actually seen one. So when she was putting it on, I'm like, she's wearing a poncho. She's like straight up Clint Eastwood right now. But no, Maxine Higgins.
You know
Glad
what?
to have you
like
here.
We haven't seen some questionable choices, Hawaiian shirts and other
You know what?
things
You're not
here.
wrong. You're not wrong. This is better than the Hawaiian shirt I wore in season 1. Man, we're here to have
Not my
conversations.
hand coming up. Sorry. We're starting off
We're
great.
off to a good start. Man, we're here. I don't even know where we're at right now. Tell them how they can get in contact with us, Maxie.
Yeah, you can email us at betweensundays@newlife.live. We've been having a lot of fun reading your comments and stories. And actually, it's been really cool because sometimes we'll come up at church and we actually don't know who all is watching. So it's been so fun to have people come up and be like, "Hey, I listened to the show." And actually, like I've on Sunday, a woman came up to me. She's like, "I watched every single episode." And I was like, "That's
Wow.
so cool." So it's really cool to hear that it is impacting folks. So if you're loving this and you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, or leave a comment if you haven't done that yet. You could also just email us and let us know if you have a story to contribute to Am I Wrong Though, or if just thoughts, comments, suggestions for episodes that you would like to see. We'd love to hear all of it.
For sure. Now, today we're going to have a conversation that has been had in churches and outside of churches. We're going to talk about mental health. And look, I know there's so many different ways we can go with this. We're not going to be able to hit it all today. So again, as Maxine said, send us an email, betweensundays@newlife.live. We would love to hear from you. And so let's talk about mental health.
Living between Sundays.
All right. So when it comes to mental health, I've got to couch it from a place of growing up in church, right? Anybody's been watching for any amount of time, I say that almost every episode that I grew up in church. And the interesting thing that I found in churches when I was growing up, in the circles I was growing up in, is it wasn't really talked about.
Yeah.
It wasn't really talked about. People would talk about fear. Fear is, God's not the author of fear, and any kind of feelings that you're feeling is not from God. And so kind of if you're feeling it, pray about it.
Yeah.
And like have faith over fear. And like there's, they would take Bible stories and kind of paint them in this way that's like, the more you pray or the more faith you have, the less fear you have, right? And there's some slivers of truth in there, but it wasn't until I was an adult that I started reading the text for myself. And like, even if Moses doesn't say, "I'm scared," like when you see the things he was bringing up, like, what if they don't believe me?
Yeah.
What if, how are they, they're going to follow me? What? I'm going back to Egypt where I just murdered a guy and just ran away for the last 40 years. So even though there's these like, you got to look into it, look at what's happening, they experienced fear.
Yeah.
Right. And God didn't condemn them for it. He didn't refuse to use them. There was things that happened within the fear, and there was some faith shown even in the midst of fear. So I want to kind of parse that out a little bit today, and also talk about kind of the whole pray it away culture that can be in church. So first, tell me kind of about how you grew up around mental health and anxiety, fear, all those things.
Yeah, so many of you know that I am Black, but I'm also Latina, and I grew up with that, the Latin side of my family, Puerto Rican side of my family. And I think in that culture, I think that mental health is definitely not something that you talk about or even think is like real, I guess. And I don't want to speak for everyone. There are lots of different people, but I think in the way that I saw it, really, it's like you don't talk about people having issues, or if you do, it's kind of like in a joking kind of way. Like Latinos are like notorious for like taking the worst quality you have or your biggest insecurity, making it your nickname.
Yeah.
So like if somebody was like, kind of crazy. Like your nickname would be la loca or like whatever. And like, you know, this person's literally having an actual mental breakdown. And now that becomes their nickname for like life, you know? And so, but the idea that mental health was something that you needed to get help for wasn't really there, right? Part of that is also like generationally, like you don't talk about things, you know, you just kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you get through, and I don't have time to think about things because I'm working and I'm trying to survive and all that. And then I think church-wide or church-wise, you know, it wasn't really until I got older and came back to faith that I was starting to see like mental health be talked about. And I think there's a reason for this. I think there's a reason for the shift. And I think about like the, you know, the Maslow's law of hierarchy, kind of the triangle kind of thing of like, you know, at base need to survive, you need like food and shelter and all that stuff. And so when you're in that space and you're operating in that space, you're not really thinking about your mental health so much. It doesn't mean that you're not having issues. It's just like, I'm doing other things. I can't think about it. And I think what's happened as society has moved gradually to being more like sustainable and like, you know, more comforts and more like ease, like it's easier than ever to get a cell phone and computer and like all this stuff. We all of a sudden find ourselves with more time to sit and like actually think. We're not actually in survival mode. And so now we're like, oh yeah, all these mental health issues are popping up and we're seeing it. So coming into this space, or one of the churches that I was at, they did actually talk about mental health. That was actually something that was there. We were just talking earlier to Pastor Corey here, who we did mental health first aid training at my church. As a group leaders, we were required to like go through it to help people who were going through like suicidal ideation tendencies and stuff, and what to do in that moment. If you're called, then you get that call. And I found it like really informative. And I love that we were talking both about God and scripture, but also, hey, here are some practical tools to actually help someone in the moment. So I think for me, it was much more of an ease to think about the two things going hand in hand, right? Getting help, mental health support, and okay, my faith in God. Those two things can work together. I think that God created us, and he created our brains, and they're complex things. And I think that he also empowered and, you know, gave us therapists, and he gave us counselors and all of these people to kind of help us work through those things that we can't work through ourselves.
I was going to say, I'm a firm believer that God created us as complex beings, right? He created us in three parts. And I said this on a previous podcast. He created us with a physical body, a mental, emotional body, or self rather. And then he created us with a spiritual self, right? And the problem that I find often when I sit down with someone for pastoral counseling is they're trying to attack one of these areas, right? When like it's not really just these three separate. It's almost like this three-part Venn diagram where like they're all mixing in there. Sometimes it's two of the three. Sometimes, most times, it's all three. Now, what the percentages lie in, we don't know. It's very rarely, 33%, 33%, 33%. It's usually, some kind of weird mix of them. But what I find is there are some churches, some circles that, like many other issues of the flesh, they'll say pray it away, right? And yes, prayer is a huge part of it, but that's not all. Like God gave us this complete person to take care of, and I mean that as in like I've got to take care of myself, but also as a pastor, I've got a person that's sitting in front of me, and I've got to take care of this complete person. So I am not afraid or any less faith-filled when I look at someone and say, hey, I'm a pastoral counselor and God has gifted me in some ways, but I really believe you need a licensed professional counselor, right? Like, because there's different pieces that we all bring to the table. For some people, and I've preached this from platform too, out of 1 Kings 19, some of y'all just aren't taking care of your physical body. If you don't take care of your physical body and you've got hormones and chemically imbalance and all that, and you're not doing what you can to take care of your physical, it affects your mental and your spiritual, right? So I feel like we're missing teaching on taking care of the whole self.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that is part because there's this concept that spirit equals good, body equals bad. And that, because my flesh is bad. And while it's true, our flesh has caused us to sin in that space. our flesh is also good, right?
Yeah.
Christ actually calls our body a temple,
Yeah.
right? And we know that the Holy Spirit indwells in the temple. So it can't be all bad,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
if God is saying, no, I'm going to take up residence here. And so I think that's why it's so easy to neglect some of these other areas, because in that space of, hyper Christianity, that, you're not being healed because you don't have enough faith, basically. Or, you're just whining or complaining or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. And I think part of that, again, that's one piece of it. But the other part of it is just, I think, ignorance. And I don't mean that in like a mean kind of like
Yeah.
way, but just like, again, the way that we talk about mental health right now is so different than even 20 years ago. Like not that long ago, we didn't have names for a lot of things that we're seeing here happening. And certainly the amount of support that's needed, right? Like I think about just simple things. Like I remember being in elementary school, I went to a public school. And I remember that in that school, we had one kid who would get removed from our class to get more extra like support services and stuff. That was it. One kid. And it was really like strange. It wasn't the norm. If you go into a public school today, so many kids have issues. So many teenagers. I was looking at some stats before we did the show, and it was showing that 1 in 3 teenagers have mental health issues right now in the United States. 1 in 3.
Yeah.
That is wild. Now, some people will be like, oh, it was always like this. We just have more diagnoses. And I think, we do have better tools to identify something, but I also think there's something happening, right? There's something happening that's making us more lonely, more anxious filled, more depressed, more all the stuff, right? And so I think that we need to begin to address some of those larger issues, not just, okay, your faith isn't strong enough, right? And in some cases that could be it, but it's certainly not in all of the areas. Sometimes we are being plagued by other entities and stuff like that. But again, what steps are you taking to get that resolved, as opposed to just, this is what it is, so I'm going to sit in it and there's nothing I can do about it.
I want to go back to something you said about how there's some of us that feel the whole spirit good, flesh bad, right? And how I'll never forget, it was a friend of mine, he pointed out how Jesus chose to become flesh. Right? Like he could have come as a spirit and done everything that he did, right? He could have, God could have just snapped his finger and said, okay, like, it's done, it's taken care of, right? But he chose to come as flesh. He embodied flesh. And here's the crazy part. Oh man, Jesus does such a good job of modeling taking care of mental, emotional, taking care of spiritual, and taking care of physical. Okay, he came as flesh, so he had to eat, he had to sleep, he had to bathe, he had to take care of his temple, right? He was a carpenter, which was some vigorous work. So he was, my Jesus in my brain is probably jacked, right? Like maybe not to the degree.
Not muscle Jesus.
Maybe not to the degree we think of jacked today, but like,
can we say well-toned?
Yes.
Okay.
He was healthy, right? I'll just say it that way. He was healthy. He took care of his physical body. He took care of his mental, emotional too. Notice that he had the disciples, and we often talk about the inner three, Peter, James, and John, right? Those were his boys. There's a reason why when we get to the Garden of Gethsemane, when we see Jesus' humanity, like we get these glimpses throughout the text, but this is the one to me that always sticks out. The fact that he weeps for Lazarus, and the fact that he's like, God, if there's any other way, Father, if there's any other way, I really don't want to do this. This is his flesh talking, right? He understood the assignment. He knew what he was there to do, but in this moment, and who does he invite with him into that space? Peter, James, and John, right? So he takes care of the physical, he takes care of his body, he takes care of the mental, emotional. He has his group of people, and then those inner three that are with him on Mount Transfiguration, on, Garden of Gethsemane, the highs and the lows, right? And then he takes care of the spiritual. He retreats. Time and time again, we see in the gospel that Jesus, after preaching, after pouring out, would retreat to spaces where it was just him and the Father, right? But I feel like, again, we go back to this place where, as you were saying, spirit good, flesh bad, like, it doesn't really matter. No, like we got to take care of all three of these things. All three of them matter, and they end up presenting themselves in ways that quite frankly, can be confusing unless you look at it through that lens.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think we need to help people have better tools to like see that and how to identify that, like what is going on. I think about also like with Jesus, he was constantly moving. He was always moving, right? And so like, yeah, he had these moments where he retreated, but his lifestyle of what we see in his ministry was movement.
Yeah.
You know, and so we think about that too for some of us. I'm not trying to solve everyone's mental health issues here. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we need to look at society as a whole and what has become true of society as a whole, not the individuals, not whatever, but like we're lazier than ever. We spend more time sitting down at our jobs, in our cars in traffic. Then we come home and we sit on the couch, and then we go to bed and we sit up as we're scrolling the phone. There's a lot of sedentary kind of behavior happening, and it has its consequences. It has consequences on our mental capacities, and some of us, we can't fix it, right? We work how we work, and there's not much time to be able to move and stuff, so we have to be more intentional than maybe Jesus was, because he was literally walking everywhere.
Right.
But it is connected. All of those pieces are connected. I was thinking randomly about this too, of you know, this has nothing to do with this. This is just I'm just bringing it out of left field kind of, but this movement piece of, you know, in America, particularly the rates of C-sections are so high, and that has a lot to do with many reasons, you know, doctors pushing it for their ease of schedule, women not wanting to go through the pain of, you know, unmedicated birth, like lots of reasons that C-sections are happening at a higher rate. And I'm not talking about, emergency C-sections, I'm talking about planned C-sections and stuff like that. But part of this also is like the types of labor that people are having are stronger or harder, all this stuff, because we're more sedentary. So because we're more sedentary, the type of labor we have changes. We have back labor, which is so intense, versus, you know, your standard kind of labor process. And so even that has its consequences on all of those levels. So we do need to find ways to move more. Not that it's going to solve every single one of your mental health issues, but we need to be cognizant of like, okay, is this compounding to everything else that's going on, you know?
So, definitive statement. How do you feel about people taking medication for mental health things?
I think that some people need to be taking medication for mental health things, but I think that they're like ideally, right, in the best of cases, that you could be working with someone to the point where you don't need to take medication every day. But there are some illnesses that people will need to have medication every day, and I don't want anybody to feel ashamed about that. But I also don't want where it is possible for you to live without it, but you've become dependent on it.
So allow me to play devil's advocate for just a moment. But Maxine, I'm a Christian. And the Bible says that Jesus heals, delivers, sets free. I read the story about the man who was demon possessed, which we'll get into that in just a minute, who was demon possessed, and he ran around and he was self-harming and all this stuff. And an encounter with Jesus changed everything. Said he left there with his right mind.
Because he does do that. He does heal, and he does all of those things still to this day. I believe that through the power of Christ that he does that. But I think that methods can change. Jesus is not walking on this earth physically anymore. He's not here to lay the hand on you. So he uses people for healing, and that can look different ways. For some people, that healing is going to come through the prayer and fasting and laying of the hands on church, and it is demonic oppression, and that's going to work. And for some others, he's going to send them really phenomenal counselors, therapists that are going to walk through them and talk through them. And for some of them, it's going to be a psychiatrist that's going to be able to prescribe medication. And it's all different things for different reasons, because he isn't physically here right now. So it is a different time. So you can't just, it's not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges kind of thing.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is, yes, there were tons of things that happened that were not written about. The book of John lets us know this, that, you know, all the acts of Jesus cannot be recorded. However, I am confident to say Jesus didn't heal every single person, even though he was physically walking the earth, right? And so we got to be careful not to put God in a box of like, oh, he did it here and he will do it this way again. He can, right? We talked about this a little bit in the last podcast where God is willing and able and all these things. That doesn't mean he will every single time do it this way. And so, no, I agree with you 1,000% that there are some people that need to be taking medications. And some of that is as simple as, like we were saying earlier, there's this chemical imbalance, right? And when there's that chemical imbalance happening, it affects the mental, this physical thing affecting the mental.
Yeah.
And so, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Some people need to be taking medication.
Yeah. And I also will say the medication is not the be all end all. And there are people that take medication and they get worse. It's not the right thing. And it brings out really bad behavior. So I'm also not the person who's like, yeah, go blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I think it needs to be a process that you go through with a trusted professional if you're going to go that route, and then monitored, right? And then continuing. I think that I find that some people get on medication and then the medication is the thing. They never go and actually go through actual therapy or talking through the things. And also they just don't address the root, which is something that we have talked a bit about prior to this conversation here. But like, I think that there are some mental health issues, again, that are for sure a chemical thing. Like you're born a certain way, too much of this thing, too much of that thing. And so you have, and I hate using even mental health because the scope of it is so wide.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
really? Are we talking about anxiety? Are we talking about depression? Are we talking about suicidal ideation? Are we talking about bipolar disorder? Are we talking, right? Like, all of those are so different. So I don't want to like just blanket cover all of the things. But for some of the mental health issues that we're dealing with, I think on the standard, anxiety, depression, that's huge. That's huge in church. That's huge across the country. We need to look at, are there things in our lives that are contributing to us feeling this way?
Yeah.
Right? Can we pinpoint those things and surrender some of those things to God too? Right? Because some of us are, I think I talked about this before, but like, you're telling me that you're anxious all the time, but you will not get off of Instagram.
Yeah.
That's going to make you more anxious.
Or depressed.
Right? Because you're on this reel. You're constantly watching CNN. So now you're a fearful person.
Yeah.
You have some kind of anxiety disorder about people because what you're consuming 24/7 is negative. And so, of course, you're going to see the worst out in people. And everybody's susceptible to this, by the way. Like, I remember at the height of like, like just all the stuff, the unrest that was going on, and like just there was a lot of political unrest, there was a lot of stuff going on in spaces, and it just felt like the world hated each other. Like everybody was about ready to fight a stranger, and I was feeling like really anxious because I was spending too much time watching the news and online and stuff. And I was like, oh gosh. And so my husband and I had planned a vacation with the girls, and so we left and we get on this vacation, which was like a cruise. And there's people from all over the country on this boat and all different types of people. And you know what no one cared about or ever brought up? Politics. Not one person cared. Like nothing. It was just like, oh, and you're like, wait, people are not that scary. Wait, not everybody hates me and not blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes just like getting out of the bubble sometimes to interrupt these cycles, because they are cycles. Anxiety, depression, these are cycles that are like kind of running through our head again. And I'm talking about ones that are situational, not chemical.
Sure.
Right? Chemical imbalances is something else. And I think that the church is not really fully equipped to even know the difference between that. I think sometimes we can hastily lump everything together.
Yeah.
Right? Because the mom who's dealing with postpartum depression can't just pray it away. It has nothing to do with her faith.
Yeah.
There's actual hormonal shifts happening, and she needs support and she needs somebody to walk her through. But the prayer is helpful. Don't not pray. Always pray.
Yeah.
But it might not be the thing that's going to get her through. And it's not that God doesn't care. It's not that God is not listening. It's that there's something going on inside of the body that there are actually fixes to that exist outside of prayer.
Yeah.
And some people don't like to hear that.
Yeah.
But then my question is, would you rather people walk around sick? I don't know. I don't feel comfortable necessarily with that either. I would rather have all of the bases covered and kind of walk people through. And so I think if you are leading people in any space, or if you're a parent, to be able to know like these signs that, oh, something's off with my kids, something's off with the people that I'm leading. What are those things that I need to be looking at? I think really too often we're like, oh, they're just kids. Oh, they're just teenagers. It is what it is,
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing so much and so often that these seeds start really small. They start off with thoughts.
Yeah.
And then they become intrusive and you get stuck on this, cycle, and all of a sudden full-blown depression.
Yeah.
Full-blown, suicidal tendencies, ideation stuff. So there's that kind. And then the other kind that I hate to like bring out like this, but I think it's just important, is that I think that our culture is rampant with sexual abuse for men and for women. And I think not enough people are talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't really have a full understanding of how much it changes people.
Yeah.
And that it changes your chemical makeup. It changes your brain wiring.
Yeah.
It changes your behaviors, your actions, the way you see people, the way you see life, the way you see God. Even if you feel like, oh, I was fine after, like I'm not a victim. I'm not da da da. Okay, that's fine. Your body remembers.
Yep.
Even your spirit remembers.
Yeah.
And so there's still a trauma that's there. And I'm talking for men and women because I think men are at higher danger because it's not safe for them to speak about this. It's considered taboo. It's considered wrong. It's considered shameful. I'm not going to open up that I went through this thing. I'm not even thinking about it anymore.
Yeah.
And yet your life is riddled with the consequences of this thing that happened to you. You're struggling with lust. You're struggling with a porn addiction. You're struggling with not being able to be monogamous. You're struggling with, fill in the blank, all of these things.
See, well, the problem is they don't see the root.
Yes.
Like they don't see that that's the issue.
So they go
right?
treat everything else. And this
Right.
has been my constant issue with the work that I do with my retreats and stuff. Is like, I want to get to the root, because you can go in and go to all the therapy sessions in the world, and you can get all the medication in the world, and they're treating you for depression, and they're treating you for anxiety, and they're treating you for bipolar disorder and all the stuff. And you have not yet opened up that when you were 5 years old, you were sexually abused.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they're treating the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to get better.
Yeah.
And the alcohol is not going to help you get better, and the drugs are not going to help you get better, and everything else that gives you the dopamine hits, those are things are not going to get better, because it needs to come out.
Yeah.
It needs to come out in a safe space, in a place where you realize like, oh yeah, God is wanting to heal that thing, and it will unlock.
And let me just say, this is where the heart of the Pray It Away comes from, right? I genuinely believe it comes from people who have been in some dark places and have experienced, only God can bring me out of here, right? But there's this weird like layering process where it's like only God can heal that thing. But sometimes in order for God to heal that thing, you've got to go through the counseling, right? To even walk you back to, oh snap, it's not depression that's the issue. It's not pornography that's the issue. So you need someone that God has gifted to be able to help walk you to that. And then you go back to, okay, so only God can heal it. But then the layer right before that is counseling. And then the layer that kind of sandwiches it is God getting you to the counselor, right? So it's this weird layering process that happens that we don't talk about. We don't realize it's happening. And so we miss it, right? There's this obscure story in 2 Kings chapter 4, and I preached on it years ago, and it's so weird. It's called Death in the Pot, and this is the prophet Elisha. And it's just this random story of the prophet Elisha, along with a couple other people are somewhere during time of a famine. And there's a school of prophets coming to sit down with Elisha to have a meal, have conversation, whatever. There's not a lot of food because of the famine. And so Elisha sends his servant or whatever out somewhere and says like, hey, go pick some gourds, go do some, we got to make some stew. He picks some stuff, doesn't know what he's picking, throws it in the pot, and gets everybody sick. Right. And so the story goes, 2 Kings chapter 4 says they began eating it and they began crying out, man of God, there's death in the pot. Like, so my immature brain is thinking like, people are throwing up, people are like maybe crapping their pants. I don't know what's going on. It's just like, it's the worst dinner party ever. And what Elisha does is so strange to me. He goes, and it doesn't give us much context, and some of you can do some digging. If you do some digging on this and find some answers, because I couldn't years ago, I didn't find any answers, and I haven't really done any digging since. So email us betweensundays@newlife.live. He goes and he finds, I believe, a stick, and he throws it in the pot, and then says, it's good. And they eat it and they're fine,
Yeah.
right? This is what the Lord kind of showed me. I don't know whether Elisha had the knowledge of herbs and spices and all that, and this will temper this and this will. I don't know if he knew that. I don't know if God bestowed it upon him in that time. But here's what I want to point out is that God didn't use Elisha to just pray over the pot.
Yeah.
And then boom, it's good.
Yeah.
Like something from the natural world was added to the pot.
Yeah.
But it was still God using Elisha to do it.
Yep.
And so when I think about mental health, it's very much the same. You got this big pot of all this stuff of how you grew up that's just getting thrown in. And sometimes people don't know what they're doing, right? The man who went out and collected these gourds, he didn't know he was poisoning everybody, right? But he just throws it in the pot and gets to cooking. And the people who are consuming, they don't know what they're consuming, right? So it's a bunch of people that are just confused. And it's neither here nor there, again, whether Elisha knew what he was doing or if he was just being obedient to God and God said, get that stick. But the point of the matter is, when there's death in the pot, you cannot limit God to just, I want you to snap your fingers, say some special words and like magically turn it. God might want to use something else. Now, pause for just a minute, because there are still lines to this. God is not going to use sage and crystals and all the other stuff. There are lines, right? This is not Elisha performing witchcraft. This is not what's going on here. But sometimes God wants to use things like counseling. Sometimes God wants to use the things that and look, I can't tell you why. That's the crazy part. And in one of the previous episodes, we talked about like suffering and things that happen. I can't always tell you why God chooses to use things that he chooses to use. But it's not up to me to know why. It's up to me to trust him in the process, right? So some of you that are sitting there and you're like, well, I've been going to church, I've been reading my Bible, I've been praying to God, and I've been faithful, I've been this and this and this, and I really want God to heal me this way. I read these stories in the Bible. Okay, but I just told you about a story where, and there's other stories like this that we just kind of gloss over, where God uses some really, this is the same thing with Moses when they get to a spring in the desert and the water's bitter. God has Moses throw a stick in there, right? And this is the same God who had Moses raise his staff and part the Red Sea. Like, God's no stranger to just doing the miraculous. But then there's these times that he says, I'm going to use what I'm going to call, we don't know because we don't get context, this could have been a regular old stick, but I believe there's some science there happening, that the root of such and such a tree or whatever tempers this thing. Is it still God's miraculous hand? Yes. Because Moses wouldn't have done that if he wasn't told to. Elisha probably wouldn't have done that if he wasn't instructed by God. But are you going to be open to God healing you the way God wants to heal you? Right. Sorry, random story, but it just popped in my brain.
That's so fascinating. I don't think I ever caught that. So it's really good. No, I think you're right. I think we have to realize where we're limiting God and how he can choose to work, and that it can be different in all the different situations, and that God gave man knowledge, and that science is not necessarily against, right? There's stuff that is just, propaganda and all that, and I get that, but science itself is not necessarily against God. Although it's been made to seem that way because we profit off of division and all of that. This is not the conspiracy episode, but I definitely think that we need to do a better job of training and bringing up people to be able to handle the nuances that come with mental health. And then also, like, we did an episode some time back about toxic behavior. And I think about some of those toxic behaviors, and those are, to me, like, those are mental health issues, some of them, right?
Oh, yeah.
And some of them are mental health issues and some of them are sin issues, right? But how do we navigate that line too? So, like, let's say you are leading, or you're in a group with someone and you're sharing a space and you can tell that they need extra support. What then is my call as a Christian brother in Christ, right? Do I just continue to listen to them and vent and like give that space? Do I tell somebody? Do I just leave the group because this whole thing is making me uncomfortable and I can tell this person's not stable? Like, what is the responsibility from one Christian to another when you're seeing that there's a mental health issue going on?
My personal opinion, first of all, listen, right? Like, listen, hear them out. And I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I really think you need some professional counseling. And I don't know why that's become a dirty insult.
Yeah.
Like people hear that, oh, you think I'm crazy, or oh, you
Yeah.
think no, I think based on what you just told me, something is hurting you, right?
Yeah.
If someone came to me with a broken arm and was like, man, this arm really hurts, and I said, you should probably go to the doctor, that
Mhm.
wouldn't be an insult. But for some reason, when it comes to mental health and you say, hey, I really think you should go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, right? Like you need to talk to somebody,
Mhm.
that becomes an insult. So I think, first of all, listen, hear the person out, because if you just dismiss them and say, I go talk to somebody who
Yeah.
cares, is what that feels like when
Yeah.
you don't listen and you just
Yeah.
say, go talk to a professional. So listen, hear them out, offer the word of God, but then also say, I really think you should, go talk to someone who is better equipped, right?
Yeah.
I will walk with you. I'll pray with you. I'll even be a sounding board for you
Yeah.
once you get out of counseling and you want to talk through whatever you talk through in counseling. I'll be that
Mhm.
sounding board. But like, as we've been saying, God has gifted that psychologist or that psychiatrist.
Right.
Prayerfully, you find the right one, because I'm a big proponent I'm a big one to push Christian counseling.
Can I talk
right?
about that?
Go for it.
Okay. So yes, but I also want to acknowledge that so, sometimes, especially if you're doing it through like these sites, that sometimes people say that they're Christian counselors and they're actually not.
Mm.
And so people get really frustrated with this. Like that was my experience. When I tried to, before I had the girls, before I got pregnant, I knew that I had some reservations about entering motherhood, right?
Mm.
And so I was like, hey, I actually want to go talk to somebody about this, because I don't want to go into this process carrying all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I go in and I did like BetterHelp or like one of these, I don't know, whatever. And I consistently put like Christian counselor.
Mhm.
When I tell you, I got 3 back-to-back, just crazy rando. Listen, this is a true story, okay? And the first counselor that I met with was this woman, older woman, and she's like, okay, this is, what my deal is and blah, blah, blah. And then she starts telling me about how she is hearing voices. Okay. And the voices are telling her to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like,
This is your counselor?
my Christian counselor.
Okay.
And totally took the entire 45-minute session to tell me about her voices that she's hearing. And I'm like, well, this is not a good entry into this process. And I'm like, okay. And then I met with the second person who was Christian, and she was giving me some pretty non-biblical advice. So I just like stopped at one point. I was like, hey, your profile said that you're Christian. Like, what do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, well, I'm just like a really religious, or not religious, spiritual person. And I believe you're not Christian. Okay, great. So, right.
That's wild.
So being mindful of like, even when you're going to these sites, to be pretty specific. And it's not that God can't use someone who's not Christian
Sure.
to speak into your life and help you get through what you're doing. But the difference is that sometimes these counselors or these people who are not aligned to you will give you advice that is contrary to the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you have this conflict, right?
Yeah.
Because there are certain things that God might be trying to do in you that's going to seem counterintuitive to someone who's just studied it,
Yeah.
right? And so I always want to make sure that I'm submitted to whoever. So right now I have a counselor who is very Christian, and he's great, and he pushes back on me, and he's like, hey, actually, where's that thought pattern coming from? And I need that.
Yeah.
I need that. And I meet with people all the time. I think particularly if you're dealing with people all the time, you need someone to be speaking to as things arise. You know what I mean? And I don't see that there's any shame in it. I think I walked through almost all my stuff by myself prior to being saved. And I didn't have counselor until I got here at New Life.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I looked at, trust me, I tried all different kinds of people. We could make a sitcom out of it, right? But a lot of the work that I did was, okay, God, what do you need me to like work on next? What book are you going to send me? What resource are you going to give me? What kind of thing? And it was a hard process, and it was a lonely process, which is why I believe so much that we should be in community around these things. If you've gone through grief, go to a grief share or something like that. If you're going through, other traumas, find these retreats that like the one that your mom runs with abortion, or the one that I do with, women, like finding these places that you can start to begin to unravel some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these issues, not all, but many issues have a root cause.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we need to be able to identify those things. But how can we do that if there's no safe place to do it?
Yeah.
How can we do that if we're constantly trying to numb ourselves because we're trying to escape the pain
Right.
of whatever is going on?
Yeah. So first of all, I gotta fix something I said. He didn't use a stick. He used flour. That's what he used. Still same
Oh.
concept, but somebody's gonna look it up and make, he didn't actually use a stick, so I had to do that. But on to what you were saying, I agree with you there. But you said, how can we find healing and whatnot if there's no
Mhm.
safe space? The problem is we don't truly view it as a safe space.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this earlier, especially when it comes to men. We have trouble being vulnerable. We have
Yeah.
trouble being open and being honest.
Mhm.
And for some people, they might not even realize this, but for some people, it's as simple as the last time I trusted someone,
Yeah.
they hurt me.
Yeah.
When I was 5, when I was 10, whenever, that I trusted Uncle so-and-so and they abused that trust,
Yeah.
even if it wasn't sexual abuse, right? It's this thing of like, if I keep these walls up, then I'm truly safe,
Yeah.
right? I'm seen as weak if I need help.
Yeah.
But back to 2 Corinthians 12,
Mm-hmm.
Paul, when he's talking about this thorn in his flesh,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of ends some of this by saying, he says, I'll boast about my weaknesses because when I am weak, then I am strong.
Yeah.
Okay, what is he talking about? What does he mean, right? And of course we know 2 Corinthians 12, he's talking about the thorn in his flesh,
Mhm.
right? We talked about that in the last episode. And he talks about how the Lord wouldn't take away the thorn in the flesh, but rather would give him strength
Yeah.
to walk through it. And so then he ends all this by saying, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. There's something that happens when we admit our weaknesses. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know how to explain it, especially speaking to all you men out there. And I get it, right? Like, I get it. I can remember growing up and being like, oh, I can't really let people know certain things about this. I still remember being a teenager and having in my head certain friends that I would tell certain things to.
Mhm.
And like, well, as long as I tell the story,
Yeah.
I'm good, right? But I didn't have that one that I could just be on. And there were friends that got a place in my life who were true blue. Like, I didn't have to worry about them running around and telling my business everywhere. But for some reason, something in me just felt like I could not be weak enough
Yeah.
to like reach out to that person and say, hey, I'm really struggling with these areas,
Yeah.
right? But there's something here when Paul says, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. When
Yeah.
you completely let down those walls, those guards, those whatever, one, you find strength that comes from God, because God
Mhm.
says, my strength is made perfect in weakness. But then you find the camaraderie and the help that you need from people.
Yeah.
I oftentimes tell people, one of the best gifts God gave us, other than himself and Jesus Christ, who died on the cross to give us access to himself, and the Holy Spirit. So I guess the third best gift that he gave us is each other,
Yeah.
right? And it's weird how those things kind of coincide. They work together. We're supposed to do life together. It's not just me and Jesus on an island somewhere. And so, like, again, can Jesus heal you with the snap of a finger? Sure, he can. Will he? I'm just going to be honest. In my life, it hasn't worked that way.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked where God just said, boop, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be willing to be weak
Yeah.
in order to be strengthened.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like the purpose in it, right? So like I think about like the times where I was like at my lowest and like I literally just wanted it to stop, right? I didn't want to feel that like burden and the pain and like all of the stuff. And I think about like what would have it been like if God did just snap his fingers and took me out of the situation. Now I'm on the other side of it. I think about how much I would have missed in growing and going through the journey. And I also think about, and I get that this is not everybody's motivation, so I'm not saying that, I'm just speaking personally for myself. The women and men now that I've been able to walk alongside because of all the things that I've walked through and like fought through and wrestled through is so meaningful. Like it feels so purposeful than if God would have just snapped his finger and just taken me out.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get that kind of refinement without it. Now, am I saying that God is going to let you have mental health issues so that you can grow and help other people? I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I think that our responsibility when it comes to mental health is to get help.
Yeah.
I think that is our bare minimum and getting help to reach out. Maybe you don't have the strength because particularly depression is a beast. Like it will make you feel like you can't even get out of bed, let alone like, I remember when I was going through everything, my mom was like, you just need to go out and go for a walk and that'll help you. And I'm like, I can't even lift up these covers. How do you want me to get up and go for a walk?
Yeah.
So it's easier said than done,
Mm-hmm.
but there has to be a moment where you do like have to like fight for a little bit if you are in that right mindset. Now, there are extreme mental health things. So I'm not talking about those cases where the person is like literally not there.
Sure.
Not talking about that.
Sure.
But if you are alert enough to know, hey, something's going on with me. There's danger here, or enough people are being concerned about me. There's something here. Our role then is to try to fight.
Yeah.
Right? We
Get
can't.
help / accept help.
Yes, get help, accept help, move, do some of the things. Don't just sit there. One of the most like defeating attitudes that I run into sometimes is like, well, that's not going to work. Well, it's not going to work. I already know it's not going to work. How do you know it's not going to work? Because I just know. No, you don't. You don't know anything.
Mhm.
You're just not wanting to do the thing because
Yeah.
you feel more comfortable in feeling down.
Yeah.
And so I want to like, just for those people who are right on that edge of like, do I get up? Do I fight for another day? Please do. I know the
Yeah.
world is hard. I know things, but there is joy. There is purpose. And God can, realign our perspective on things. And getting help is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And also, we need more people. We need more Christians to become counselors and therapists that are rooted in the word of Christ, because
Yes.
I'll promise you, there are not enough. There are
Let me
more
just start
people.
with not even yes, we need you to become counselors, but start with being rooted and grounded in the Word of God.
Yes.
Because you'd be surprised at how many people in your friend group could benefit from just you knowing the Word.
Yeah.
Right. So in short, before we get to the am I wrong though, if you're struggling with mental health, get help / accept help, and realize that help could come in the form of mental, emotional, it could come in the form of physical, it could come in the form of spiritual.
Yeah.
Prayerfully, you find help in all of those, right?
Yeah.
So like, I just want to say, do the checklist, right? And this is what we've been kind of dancing around in and out of this whole time is, again, it's probably some mix of all of it. So do the checklist. Like, okay, if my mental isn't feeling like it's good, is there something physical going on? Go see a doctor, for God's sake.
Mhm.
I wish I pulled up the stats. Tony, what are the stats of people that actually go get checkups?
Let's see. Okay.
Because y'all sitting there and being like, hey, last few
Yeah.
months, I've just been more tired than usual. I've just been this.
Yeah.
I've just been, go check on your physical.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself the question, am I sitting around way more than I should be?
Mhm.
Can I get up in the mornings and take a walk? I tell people, you don't have to be the CrossFit God. You don't have to be that
Yeah.
person, but like move your body.
Yeah.
Right? So check on the physical, check on the spiritual, and we could spend a whole other episode on this. In fact, we will. We're doing an episode on the spiritual, deliverance, things like that.
Yeah.
But check on the spiritual, because look, even if you're a child of God and you are not demonically possessed, you
Yeah.
can be demonically oppressed,
Yeah.
meaning demons are playing with your life, right?
Yes.
Straight up. And so check on the physical, check on the spiritual, and check on the mental, emotional. Go talk to somebody,
Yeah.
right? Like go.
Can I read something real quick?
Yeah,
So I was
go
looking
for
up
it.
stats earlier, and I see a stat here that says 67% of pastors say that they don't feel equipped to respond to mental health issues.
Wow.
That's huge, considering that most people who are within the church think to go to their pastor
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And that person might not really fully be equipped. This is also another reason to not always just seek the person who's at platform and
Yes.
speaking, because just because they gave a great message
Mhm.
doesn't mean that that person is the right person. And hopefully there's a church that they have multiple people
Yeah.
on staff or whatever that you could speak to and safely. But just that is alarming. But also like, man, how are we equipping our leaders? How are we equipping? What are we saying is important as they lead? Are we spending more time talking about how to, I don't know, craft a great message, or, and those are important things, and finance, those are important things too. But also, if we're called to shepherd as part of pastoring,
Feed my lambs, tend my sheep.
like we need to be able to address some of these issues, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I saw here was like that religious involvement is actually linked to lower depression in 60% of studies. So people who are in like that, now that doesn't mean that people who are in church don't deal with depression.
Right,
They
right.
do, but overall that number is a pretty big number. And so I don't know, I was just reading this. The other crazy thing here, 25% of young adults ages 18 to 24 have anxiety disorders.
Mm.
That's huge. And
25%
then
is significant.
50% report anxiety and depression feelings.
Wow.
Half.
Wow.
And that's the people that they asked.
Right.
Like, can you imagine? So I think this is a bigger issue, and I think we want to make sure that we walk with it with a little more care than just saying, hey, let's pray about it. But please do pray about it.
Yeah.
Please don't. I'm not underestimating the power of prayer for sure.
Yeah.
But what else can we give past that point?
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
All right. Tony, what you got?
Do you want the stat that you asked?
Oh
me to
yeah,
look
give
up,
me
or-
that stat, and then
Sorry.
we'll go to the am I wrong though.
No, you're fine. Well, it seems a bit more brighter than I would have thought. So it
Okay.
says about-
Lies. Just kidding.
Again, this is
Conspiracy.
check your stuff. I'm going off of the AI thing that pops up on Google.
Sure.
But it's 85% of U.S. adults visit the doctor or health professional annually.
Hmm.
So
That is higher than I thought.
yeah. So about 15%
Okay.
don't really do any of that. But yeah.
Can I say something controversial?
Sure.
Here's the thing too, because like, yes, go to the doctor, but like also like know who your doctor is and know your doctor's limitations too, because I'm just gonna say it, like the training that doctors receive in the West is very specific to like address symptomatic things,
Yeah.
again, not root things. And so they might miss stuff. We've all had those experiences where we've gone to the doctor and not felt heard or understood. And I'm not saying every single doctor is bad.
Right.
So please don't hear that. But I think that the way that we practice medicine here is not preventative.
Sure.
Right. And so we need to be careful of that as well, of like trusting everything that the doctor says and
Right.
like, well, the doctor says I'm fine, but I'm clearly not fine. Like, go get a second opinion, go get a third opinion, go do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're a parent of a child and you can sense something's off, but the doctor's telling you that everything's okay. Go get a second opinion, go get a third opinion, go figure out what you need to figure out, because sometimes they're just not properly trained.
Yeah.
Sometimes doctors only spend like a few months in a particular area of practice. And so that's not really their specialty. So they're not going to know exactly what to say. And I know it's going to rub some folks the wrong way. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to demean anything, but it's just the practicality of things of like, you're not going to know all of the things.
Yeah.
And so we need to be mindful going into that. It's the same thing of like, I think some stuff is changing now, but a lot of people go into the doctor and they're looking for a diet pill. They're looking for a thing. And the doctor's not even saying, hey, actually, you need to work out
Push the plate away.
and eat better
Yeah.
and have healthy habits. And, you know,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I just think take that with a grain of salt, I guess, you know,
No, makes sense.
Yeah,
That's good.
Oh,
sorry.
word.
Don't come for me if you're a doctor.
All right, we'll get to our am I wrong though segment. So this one reads as such. Hey, I don't really know how to say this without it sounding all over the place. I'm 20 and I thought I had a real relationship with Jesus, but right now I feel like I'm losing it. My mind is nonstop, anxious, overthinking, exhausted, and everyone keeps saying just trust God, but I don't even know what that's supposed to look like when my brain won't slow down. Sometimes I read my Bible and it feels like nothing, just words. Then I start thinking, what if I was never actually saved? What if I just felt something emotional and called it faith? I feel fake at church, like everyone else is good and I'm just standing there trying not to panic. I don't want to tell anyone because I feel like they'll either judge me or just throw Bible verses at me and move on. I've been praying, but it feels like I'm talking to nothing, and then I feel guilty for even thinking that. I don't know if this is a mental health thing or a faith thing or both. I just feel stuck in my head and honestly really tired. Am I losing my faith or is this normal?
I'll let you answer first.
Take a nap. No. Should hear the tired part. I'm like, take a nap.
That's real though.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah. I get the frustration, right, of you kind of feeling the way that you're feeling and getting the responses that you're getting. I think that's what the whole episode that we've been talking about is. I don't think that you need to question whether you have faith or not, because again, you're struggling with your thought patterns and your things. God is still very real and he's still moving, even if you're having doubt and struggling through all of these things. But I will say it's okay to go get help. I'm just going to keep repeating that. It sounds like you could benefit from talking to someone, from getting out of some of those repetitive or intrusive thoughts that are going on. And that you would find a safe place to do that. I would be concerned to ask, like, or curious to know, like, how long this whole thing has been going on for you, and if anything like triggered it. Has something happened recently that's making you more anxious, more, into this? So there's questions still around this that I would love to like know that I don't have the information for. But ultimately, I think that you are not wrong for having doubts and feeling, and just like, I need go talk to someone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. So I know you said you're tired of people throwing Bible at you, but I'm gonna throw some Bible at you. So, first of all, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being honest. Man, read through the Psalms. Read through the Psalms, and what you'll notice there is David. Now, David didn't write all of the Psalms. We know this, but man, we see highs and lows. And I don't think we talk about that as enough as Christians, that being in Christ is still highs and lows. We are still in these bodies, as we've been talking about this whole time. The last episode, we talked about being in a fallen world. Put all this together, right? So like circumstances happen, doesn't change who God is, which we talked about already, but like it still has an effect on my psyche, still has an effect on this fallen world means my chemical imbalances, all these kind of things. I love that all throughout the Bible, but the Psalms is more of like poems. It feels like you're quite literally reading some of David's prayers, right? And there's all these highs and all these lows, but the constant that you see in there is that he's willing to talk to God about it. He's willing to like wrestle through it. And so keep wrestling through it. And as Max said, go talk to somebody, get some help, right? And as we said,
no, I was just gonna say also, like, you said, how old is this person? 20? People hate when I say this, but I'm going to say it. When you are in your 20s, early 20s, and when you are in your early teens, your brain is kind of in the same place chemically, even though like you're, years apart, but your brain is kind of doing similar things. It's a huge, massive leap. And so your hormones and your brain connections, everything is kind of going haywire anyway, which is why like, you make some dumb decisions sometimes in your early 20s, just like you make some dumb decisions when you're like 13 and 14 years old. And so I would also say like, don't underestimate like the power that some time will have on the situation and how you're feeling. Knowing that can sometimes help you like, okay, realize this is where I'm at. Like, oh yeah, my 20s might feel a little wobbly, and that's normal and natural, and not, again, that it's not going to stay this way forever and ever. Amen. Right? That there is breakthrough and there's promise. But I also want to ask you specifically, like, what are you expecting? Like, what are you wanting out of this? Because you say, I don't want the Bible verses. I don't want people to tell me like that everything's gonna be okay. What is it that you would like? Like if your friend were asking you this, like, what would you want? What kind of support are you looking for? What would you say to them? Like, and I think that sometimes helps us to figure that out too. Yeah. When we're like, oh, this is about a friend. This is not even about me. But I think you need to know what it is that you're actually looking for. And you might not have that answer yet, but it's a worthwhile endeavor to like figure that out. Yeah.
I think another thing to take note of is, so we already said it, talk to somebody, acknowledge the feelings, right? I'm never going to tell somebody to act like it's not there. If you're hurting, you're hurting. Ignoring it doesn't do anything. But I would caution anyone watching this, very rarely, if ever, is it helpful to be driven by your emotions. The only time, and like push back if you need to, the only time I can think that being driven by my emotions would be helpful is if my wife and my children's lives are on the line. Like that would be a purely emotional response. All logic goes out the window for them, right? But feel the emotion, acknowledge the emotion, talk to somebody about it, but you need to realize that it's an emotion, right? It doesn't have to be, and most times it's not the actual reality, right? If I'm in a mood and Max says something to me and I feel like she said it to demean me or to like she's trying to get at me, like she's trying to, she's trying to start a fight or something. Like I feel that way, but that's not the reality. That's my reality, right? But it's not the reality.
Yeah.
So the only way to get through that, and I know this is a baby example, but the only way to get through that is to, one, acknowledge this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And in this case, I should probably talk to Max about it, right? And then get to this place where I'm not reacting out of my emotion. I'm not responding to her out of my emotion. I'm not, whatever. So, I had to put that caution in there because I don't know that we said that throughout the whole episode. I do want to give validity to the fact that mental health is a thing, right? Mental health struggles is a thing. And again, I know it's a very umbrella statement, but the things that people go through, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, things like that, all that is real, right? It's a real feeling that we have. But I just want to caution you not to lean into this, go with the wind, go with my feelings. This is how I feel, so this is what's real. That's not always true.
Yeah.
Not always true.
Obviously we barely scratched the surface on this episode about mental health. We knew we were not going to be able to cover everything, and we didn't cover almost anything. But I love that it's a beginning of a conversation hopefully you can have, and then we can always do a part 2 too as we kind of drill down. I do want to just address something really quickly. I think it's a really valuable resource. We were talking about, they do offer, most counties will offer a mental health first aid class that I think is so important for if you're leading in any capacity to have taken. And it's a great resource, again, for like what happens when the extreme does happen, right? Because if you're caring for people long enough, you will have the extreme happen for someone. And for you not to freeze up or not to say the wrong thing or whatever the case may be, or even just to know what to look out for, I think it's a really helpful resource to look into taking some of those classes.
For sure.
And then just to learn how your brain works, right? I love, I might have mentioned this book in the past, but Dr. Caroline Leaf's book, Switch on Your Brain, is so fascinating because it does talk about the way that God wired our brain. So it comes from a scientific standpoint, but also a biblical standpoint. And it was really cool to see that, how those thoughts get rewired and all of that. So if you're interested in doing some reading around that, that could be a really fun, useful resource.
It's good stuff.
You have anything?
I was racking my brain trying to think of some books I've read, and I can't think of any titles right now. So perhaps on part 2, I will have the actual names to the books and whatnot. So until next time, look, y'all, if you have not already, leave a review on whatever platform you listen to us on. Leave a review, like, comment, share. And as we've already said multiple times, we want to hear from you. So between Sundays at newlife.live, let us know how these episodes are affecting you. And if they're, the prayer is that it gives you a good segue, a good way to be able to talk about these things with your families and friends and all that. So if it's doing that, let us know. If it's not doing that and there's something you think we could do better, we take hate mail too. Okay? Just kidding. We love y'all, and we'll see y'all next time.